Manafort's a good man. He was with Ronald Reagan. He was with a lot of different people over the years, and I feel very sad about that. It doesn't involve me, but I still feel, it's a very sad thing that happened.
Very sad. That was the president's reaction when reporters asked him about convicted felon Paul Manafort last week. Today, reporters asked the President of the United States about the death of decorated war hero and Senator John McCain. Here was his reaction.
Mr. President, any thoughts on John McCain? Any thoughts on John McCain, sir?
Hello, folks.
Thank you.
Why won't you say anything about John McCain? Mr. President, do you have any thoughts on John McCain? Do you have any thoughts at all about John McCain? Do you believe John McCain was a hero, sir? Nothing at all about John McCain. Okay.
That's just weird, right? He just got asked several times today, many opportunities, very clear. There was no chance he didn't hear that question, and he just looked straight ahead when asked about John McCain. It's a layup. Saying something nice about John McCain is about the easiest thing any American could possibly do today. It would come easier than most of your normal errands. But all of that came after the Washington Post reported that President Trump refused to release a statement that would have called McCain a, quote, hero. Instead, he sent a tweet that didn't offer a single word of praise for McCain. It said, "My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you." That's nice, but no compliment. It's not hard to call John McCain a hero. It's just not hard at all. The White House also broke tradition this morning by placing its flag back at full staff before John McCain's burial, even as the Capitol flag remained at half staff. But tonight, President Trump appears to be relenting. After withering criticism from the American Legion, which represents 2 million veterans, and criticism from kind of everyone else, the White House flag, sometime in the 3 o'clock hour, went back to half staff again late this afternoon. And tonight, after nearly 48 hours of refusing to utter a positive word about American hero John McCain, the president said this.
Also, our hearts and prayers are going to the family of Senator John McCain. Going to be a lot of activity over the next number of days, and we very much appreciate everything that Senator McCain has done for our country. So thank you very much.
Well, that's a start. Joining us now is Jon Meacham, a presidential historian and the author of The Soul of America. Also joining us is Jennifer Rubin, a conservative opinion writer at The Washington Post. Both are MSNBC contributors. I mean, look, Jennifer, I'm just trying to keep it under wraps here because I just don't understand. When somebody dies, it's just not hard to say something nice about them because they're not going to know you said anything nice about them. So you get to take the win about being mean to them while they were alive. I just don't understand why this was such a struggle, but more interestingly, why he flipped.
Well, Ali, it's because you're not a raging narcissist that you find it difficult to understand why someone can't say something nice about a dead war hero. But Trump is incapable of acknowledging other people's superiority. And John McCain was in every way imaginable superior to the president of the United States. So it was not going to be something that he was going to do willingly. And I think he was probably under the impression that, like Charlottesville, like all of the other horrible things he said and done, that there would be a little fuss and then things would move on. But here he took on the wrong group of people, and that is veterans. The 2 million people who are members of or allied with the American Legion, I think, had an impression on him. And from what we understand, everyone in the White House, in terms of his senior staff, in terms of General Mattis, in terms of even Sarah Huckabee Sanders, were basically telling him, you need to do this, you need to do this. Now, in the past, John McCain has resisted that kind of advice, but I think he could probably see if he was watching Fox, which is where he likes to go, even they were praising John McCain. Yep. So the jig was up, and this is not going to go away.
Everybody was praising John McCain.
Exactly.
And a lot of people who, Jon Meacham, I talked to a lot of people who would describe John McCain as their nemesis. John McCain was a thorn in the side to a lot of people in his party, in the Democratic Party. Is there a historical sort of precedent for the idea that the president has or invents a nemesis, and then there's just no ability to sort of get past partisanship in order to honor that person? John McCain is one of these people that people on the left honor, people on the right honor. People say they didn't agree with him, but they respected the idea that he put principle before most other things.
Yeah. You know, the person who presided the longest in that office where he was sitting today, where John Carl was giving him the chance to do the right thing, was Franklin Roosevelt, who said in September of 1932, in the midst of the Great Depression, in the midst of his campaign against Herbert Hoover, that the presidency is not an engineering or managerial job. That's the least of it. It is preeminently a place of moral leadership. That was FDR's vision of the presidency. It was also his cousin Theodore's. It was the biggest, it was the same view that the biggest men so far who have held that office have adhered to. And you know, it's. I agree with Jennifer, and we, you know, it's sweet of you in a way to be somewhat surprised. I think it speaks well of your character. But we're at a point where I was sort of toting up the list. A lot of us got a sense of this with his attack on Senator McCain during the campaign, but also the attack on the Kahns, the Gold Star family. Right. And there's something telling about that. I'm practicing psychiatry without a license, but that's what biographers do. He has a very hard time acknowledging the courage and sacrifice of others. And I think it's because he has fundamental, if unacknowledged, anxieties about his own virtues.
So, Jennifer, John McCain had released, he had written a letter, he'd written a statement to Americans that was to be released upon his passing. And his longtime friend and former campaign manager, Rick Davis, read that today. There's an interesting paragraph in here that I want to play that I think is very telling. It's after John McCain talking about America's greatness. This is what he wrote.
These are John's words. We weaken our greatness when we confuse our patriotism with tribal rivalries that have sown resentment and hatred and violence in all the corners of the globe. We weaken it when we hide behind walls rather than tear them down, when we doubt the power of our ideals rather than trust them to be the great force for change they have always been. Do not despair of our present difficulties. We believe always in the promise and greatness of America, because nothing is inevitable here. Americans never quit. We never surrender. We never hide from history. We make history.
So, Jennifer, putting aside the fact that he said we weaken it when we hide behind walls, which seemed like a not-so-veiled attack on President Trump, we weaken our greatness when we confuse our patriotism with tribal rivalries that have sown resentment and hatred and violence in all the corners of the globe. There isn't something even remotely partisan about that statement, but it does speak to our national anxiety right now. And I often say to somebody like you, a conservative, is this the kind of thing that Republicans can rally around and say, this is what Republicans have stood for in this country for decades prior to Donald Trump showing up?
It would be my fond hope, but at this present juncture, I feel that the party has completely lost his way. And I think they will salute John McCain. They will make nice speeches, and then they'll go back to their toadyism. And it is not until the party is delivered one or maybe more devastating election losses that they will come around to see the error of their ways. And I think we all think of Donald Trump when we hear those words, but those are equally applicable to the Republican Party as a whole, which has become this tribalistic, know-nothing, unprincipled party that simply jumps whenever Donald Trump tells them to, and is loath to perform their constitutional obligation, which is to check the President of the United States, which is to conduct appropriate oversight. And so I would like to think that Donald Trump would have finally played his tune out, but I see no evidence of that. Now, I will grant you, the Republican Party is a lot smaller these days, in part because people like me have left it. If you do the math, you know, you can come up with 10 or 15 million people who no longer identify as Republicans. So it's a smaller party than it used to be. But I still maintain that the only way to rescue the party or to clear the decks is to, frankly, give them a spanking in November and probably in 2020 as well.
John, let's talk about how the world is going to remember these two men and their interactions. John McCain, it was imperfect. He says it himself. There are lots of things that he's criticized for, but there are a lot of things for which he is admired. And in the end, he will be remembered the way he wanted to be remembered, a man who served his country, hopefully honorably. I think those were, I'm paraphrasing his own words about how he wishes to be remembered. Yep. How will history remember him and his relationship with Donald Trump, do you think?
Well, John McCain is a great American original. He's a great American story. He's fascinating, not least because he feels as though he's a World War II figure, though he was younger than that. His heroism was tested in the crucible of Vietnam and captivity. And yet, when we look at him, I think to some extent, we tend to see someone who has more in common with George H.W. Bush or Bob Dole, the World War II guys, who are also passing so quickly. Seems to me that the contrast between John McCain and the incumbent president will be a useful one for historians and biographers who look at the competing traditions in American life. John McCain was someone who, in this remarkable Last Testament, has once again affirmed a big-hearted vision of the country. It's a vision that, again, for all their faults, TR had it, Ronald Reagan had it, John McCain had it. Donald Trump represents the other end of that spectrum, which is the tradition of building walls, imposing tariffs, of constricting the classic conservative ideas of the free movement of thought and people. Conservatives, in the classical sense, are people who want to let freedom go as far as it possibly can, as long as it doesn't harm you or me. And John McCain represents opening arms. Donald Trump, today, you saw him, folds them.
Yeah, he certainly did. Thanks to both of you, John Meacham and Jennifer Rubin.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.